Alrighty, hi everyone. My name is Gabby and I'm a PhD student with the Healthy Landscapes Research Group. I'm not quite as far along as the other PhD students, so instead of discussing my methodology and results, I'm going to be talking about the really cool literature that I've been reading at the moment. Bit of background about me, I'm from South Australia where I completed a undergrad degree in ecology, which is where I first started to develop an interest for environmental conservation. So I believe that preserving naturally dark skies is a really important and often overlooked aspect of environmental conservation. So I hope that this presentation shows you why light pollution is a serious global conservation issue. And I believe that in order to conserve an environment effectively, we need to understand people's relationship to that environment, which leads me to my PhD topic, using human perceptions to inform decisions around urban lighting. Okay, so why might we want to change our decisions around urban lighting in the first place? Well, this is because excessive use of artificial light is a global issue. Research has shown that approximately 80% of the global population live under light polluted skies, and that 99% of the US and European population live under light polluted skies. And don't be fooled by how dark Australia looks in the corner. If we zoom into some of the cities within Australia, such as Sydney and Melbourne, their visibility of the night sky can be just as poor as what you would see in cities in the US and in Europe. And even Hobart isn't that too far behind. It's classified as having bright suburban skies. So now that we have an appreciation for the scale of this issue, why is it a problem and what is light pollution? Well, the definition of light pollution varies slightly depending on the discipline. For example, when the first artificial sky globe world map was created, light pollution was defined as an increase in outdoor lighting levels at night by anthropogenic sources, and this definition is still widely used when we're talking about astronomical light pollution. However, by calling any amount of artificial light pollution, this disregards how an appropriate amount of lighting can be beneficial for humans. Appropriate levels of lighting can increase safety at night and therefore encourage use of outdoor spaces, which can have economic and social benefits. With that in mind, the definition that I prefer and what I'll be using for my research and this presentation is light pollution is artificial lighting that causes harm to animals and/or humans. So to elaborate on that a little bit further, I'm sure by now we've all heard that looking at our phone or our computer before bed isn't good for us. And this is because blue light in the evening is bad for our sleep. But these disruptions in circadian rhythms can have more sinister health effects. For example, some recent research has come out looking at the increased risk in mental health disorders and increased risk in inflammatory conditions such as heart disease and diabetes. And it's not just our sleep that's getting disrupted, it's disrupting the sleep of wildlife as well. In addition to sleep disruption, light pollution can also disrupt wildlife reproduction, competition, and behaviour, and has therefore become a global driving force in biodiversity loss. And finally, light pollution has negative effects on plants too. For example, delaying when deciduous species lose their leaves and when plants flower. And as you can imagine, this would have flow-on effects to animals that use plants for their shelter and for food. So given that we have such a rich body of literature behind us, why are there global predictions that light pollution is predicted to increase by 2% each year? Well, this is a really complicated question to answer, and there are a lot of factors that we need to consider, such as the global shift from traditional style lighting to LED lighting, new lighting infrastructure in places that didn't have them before, lack of awareness and education about light pollution, and a knowledge gap in our research about public perceptions of outdoor artificial light at night, which brings us to my project. So for the first chapter of my PhD, and what I'm currently working on, is a literature review to try and answer the question, what influences public perception of light pollution? So I've put together this preliminary conceptual model. Don't worry, I know it's a lot and I'll break it down for you guys. So of all the different factors that could influence public perception of light pollution, and as I continue to read the literature, I will continue to go back and readjust this model accordingly. So to break it down a bit further, I've sort of made some suggestions on the factors that would influence the lighting that we can actually see and what we have, and those include government policies, guidelines, lighting standards, council strategies, energy efficiency and cost, research, as well as public perception. And then I've broken down how lighting can lead to light pollution, and then I've put together the different subcategories of light pollution. And I've done this because some people may feel more strongly influenced by the effects it has on animals due to strong environmental values, or some people might be influenced more by the effect that it has on human health due to strong altruistic and egoistic values. And also I've broken down astronomical light pollution a bit further. Astronomical light pollution can have negative effects on astrotourism, indigenous astronomy, which is a social justice issue on its own, and astronomy. And because these aspects may have different impacts on public perception, depending on people's beliefs and values around light pollution and dark sky conservation. And then lastly, I'm pointing out that perceived safety and education on light pollution can also influence public perception around these, light pollution. Alrighty, so to bring this all together, a lot of research has been conducted on why light pollution can be harmful for animals and humans, and also the different factors of lighting, such as like uniformity, for example, and how that can influence perceived safety. But little research has been conducted on how these are all related, and then how public perception can influence human behaviour when it comes to the lighting that we are installing ourselves and the lighting that we expect to see in our streets and from commercial venues. And it's really important to consider public perception on lighting, because it's important to get across effective messaging when implementing management strategies to stakeholders by understanding their values and what factors influence their perceptions. And this could involve communicating changes to lighting in a variety of ways. For example, if we know some things about our community and their values are really important in regard to human health and well-being, when we're making these changes, instead of drilling home the message that making these changes to lighting is really important for the ecosystem, we could take more time and effort to talk about how the community's safety will also be addressed. Okay. So for the other chapters of my PhD, I will be collecting data about people's values, beliefs, and attitudes surrounding light pollution. And with the results from the national survey that I'll be conducting, I will be using this data to create public participatory GIS map, which involves mapping different people's values across a landscape. I think it would be really interesting to see if there are any trends between people living in rural communities, urban communities, and coastal communities. And then hopefully I'll be able to overlay people's values and how they're distributed across Australia with where the different levels of light pollution are. It would be interesting to see if there's a pattern or correlation between people living in areas with high light pollution and their perspectives about light pollution. And then finally, with the survey results, I'm going to try and put together a predictive model with the different aspects of lighting and see if I'll be able to predict the public's attitudes towards different lighting strategies. Okay, and then lastly, I've paired up with the Australasian Dark Sky Alliance, which is a non-profit charity organisation to put an expression of interest for an art installation in the Vivid Light Festival this year in Sydney. ADSA were invited to submit an application as a part of this festival, which is really cool to see that they're interested in raising some awareness about light pollution and learning a bit more about it. So we will be doing this by hiring out a venue as a part of Vivid and then projecting different images of the dark sky onto walls and ceilings. And we'll be doing this to show how different destinations from different landscapes in different cities might vary in their light pollution. And we'll also use this venue to promote astrotourism. So I'm going to treat this event as a pilot for collecting public perceptions around light pollution by asking event goers to complete a survey to learn about their values and beliefs around conserving the night sky. And if the event is successful, who knows, maybe I'll see if it can be a part of Dark Morpho, which could be pretty cool. Alrighty, so thank you so much for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions or suggestions, I would love to hear them. Thank you.